Okay. We should be live on YouTube. Just pulling down the link. Let's see how quickly I can do this. Go. Give me a sec. One day, Jeff, I'm going to be lightning quick with this, but for now, I'm going to be a little slower. We're live. Okay. Share the link. Post sent. Jeff, we're ready to go.
All right. Sweet.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Saturday, May 10th, 2025. We are officially 4 days out from the 2025 NFL schedule release. I'm Andrew Duhan. Joined alongside me is my electric co-host. Some of you know him as J Ben, former radio host at 92.9, The Game in Atlanta, Falcons insider, professor, coach, Jeff Benedict. Find him on X at jben_flightpath. Check out the banner behind him. He's even got the shirt too. We got our merch rolling. I love this. You can talk your shit to him, but please do not complain and play victim when he claps back. If you can't take the heat, stay the fuck out of his mentions. As always, packed agenda. Before we dive in, I want to thank all of you for subscribing. We had a pretty big week last week. It was really cool to see all of you guys view our videos, see our shorts. We only go as far as you guys take us. You stop watching, we stop recording. It's just that simple. Again, this is the 8th Flight Path episode. I'm really excited, so buckle up and enjoy the ride. So, packed agenda as always. Shortly after we recorded last week's episode, Jeff, offensive coordinator for the Falcons, Zac Robinson, came out and said that I'm expecting Kyle Pitts to take a big jump. Just as a reminder to everybody, Kyle Pitts was the first draft pick for this new regime. He was taken 4th overall in 2021. We passed up on players such as Jamar Chase, Penix Sewell, Pat Surtain, and Micah Parsons to take a tight end 4th overall. At the time, he was electric. We had Matt Ryan. So maybe the pick was a little more justified than us looking back 4 years later. But in his rookie season with Matt, he was the first tight end as a rookie to breach 1,000 yards since Mike Ditka. Ditka's record was then breached by Bowers this past year. He's had moments, right, Jeff? And you even bring it up. Weeks 5 through 8 this past year, he was averaging, I believe, 78.5 yards. He had 5 catches. I think he had 2 touchdowns in that span. You extrapolate those numbers and it's all pro. Jeff, is he finally going to take the big leap we're all waiting for?
I think that's up to him, right? Like, I'm really tired of people blaming quarterbacks. And I know the quarterbacks here haven't been all that great. You know, I know I took some heat last week because I talked about trading him. Because ultimately, to me, if he does take that next step, right, if he finally lives up to being that type of tight end we hoped he could be, you're not bringing him back anyway, except for what, maybe a year? Like maybe you franchise tag him, and then you're still going to pay him, what is that, 14, 15 million if you do franchise tag him. But then he's still the next year, you're not going to tag him twice, and he's a non-quarterback, so you can't tag him 3 times anyway. So at best, you're going to get another 3 years out of him, and then he's going to walk. right? So if he does take the next step, and I hope he does, I really do. Like, I don't hate Kyle Pitts. I don't have this weird obsession with not wanting him here. For me, I'm just looking at it from a business decision, right? The business decision is, even if you're done tagging him once, maybe twice, and again, they're not going to tag him twice. Get that out. Go ahead and just get that out your mind now. You're not going to pay him what he's going to be worth on the open market if he does take that next step. So I think it's almost a catch-22 for the Falcons. Damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. But to me, there have been teams that have inquired about his availability. There have been teams that would like to have him. Get rid of him while you can. Let's get this thing going. But look, I hope he does take the next step. I think it would be good for a guy like Nine, Michael Penix to have a tight end, that can do some things, right? Because he can do some things. There's no doubt about that one, right? And so I wish that people would hold him accountable and stop blaming quarterbacks. Stop blaming, like, a quarterback doesn't give up on a route, right? A quarterback isn't dropping balls. And those are things that we have seen regardless of who's taking snaps under center for the Falcons. So, I hope he does take the next step. There are obviously seems like some really good things going here offensively. I think when you look at this roster top to bottom, this is a great roster to support him. But ultimately it's going to be up to him. And so if he decides he finally wants to play football, he doesn't want to be the Vic Beasley of offense. Perfect. Great. Like, I welcome it. But on the flip side, if that does happen, he won't be here long.
The part that gets me, Jeff, and we're talking about his money for the past 5 years. Like, if you just look at the total cash paid out to tight ends from 2021 through 2025, what will ultimately be paid to Pitts this year, he ranks in the top 10, and his numbers are far from a top 10 tight end. Now we're getting into that situation that if this guy has an all-pro season, right, and Nine, for whatever he did in those 3 games, looks like the type of quarterback that can not only help Pitts get there, but also London too. So we have 2 weapons right there that could all of a sudden just shoot up in the ranks of the NFL and command huge contracts. They're both eligible. Well, obviously, we can sign Pitts after next year because he's going to be a free agent, but London's also eligible for an extension this year. So then it becomes a question, like, how good, like, we can't keep everybody, right? Like, we can't keep Bijan, we can't pay London, we can't pay Pitt, and then we're also going to have to pay Nine, hopefully, if he does well in the future. So you have to make a decision, and I think one of those 4, I mean, it's not going to be Penix, but one of those 3 weapons needs to go. You can't pay all 3, and I think Pitts is probably the odd man out in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that not a lot of people are thinking about, right? And when you look at those 4 core guys, the ones that you just mentioned, Kyle Pitts is the odd man out. You're not going to let Bijan walk, right? I mean, if that dude keeps having, if he keeps showing what he's shown, he's on his way to a Hall of Fame career. You're not going to let him walk over keeping a tight end. Because at this point, Kyle Pitts hasn't shown you anything to be a Hall of Fame caliber type of talent, right? And Drake London showed last year at the end of the year when he and Nine were on the field together that was his dude. You're not letting him walk either, right? And so when you look at that, he 100% is the odd man out. And then even take it a year further, let's say things work out the way that we hope they do. Then you got to go pay JPJ and you got to go pay Walker, right? The very next year after you pay Penix, right? So like, there's going to be some things that if you look forward and you look at the next 5 to 6 years, there's a lot of other dudes that you hope, and you have to use the word hope, work out far better than he does. And if that's the case, you're not paying him regardless. So, and I feel like we probably keep harping on, or I keep harping on this, right, of trading him. But I just feel like if there's teams that are willing to pay for him now or willing to give you something for him now, go ahead and get rid of him so that this offense can learn to function without him. And be ready to go by the time the season kicks off.
And we'll dive into this more in the last segment of our show where we talk about the rumors, latest and greatest, like trades and free agency acquisitions. But one thing just popped in my head as you were talking about it. We've been talking about a lot how if a QB gets injured during the summer, people will come running to the Falcons to trade for Cousins. Can you see a similar situation happen with Pitts where, let's say Kelsey, he's not getting any younger. What if he goes down in camp, or another team that's really dependent on their tight end? If one of them goes down, can you see a situation where Pitts is the one that gets traded over the summer?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I think if you come to the Falcons with the right numbers, right, when you come to them with the right draft picks, you're not going to say no. I mean, Terry Fontenot said last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, everybody, like we're looking at moves for everybody, not just the quarterback. So yeah, there's situations where I think you could see Tyler Algier be traded here in the next couple months. You can see Kyle Pitts be like. There's a lot of scenarios where a lot of different guys that our fan base may absolutely love, maybe traded, for the right price. And so I think there are a few core group of guys that are off limits, the ones that we've already mentioned, the Drake Londons, the Bijan Robinsons, Michael Penix. You look at the offensive line, you're not going to get rid of Chris Lindstrom. You're not going to get rid of Jake Matthews. But Bergeron, you trade him. Caleb McGarry, they'd be happy to get rid of him. You know what I mean? Like there's not a whole lot of guys on this roster that are untouchable for the right price. And so, there's probably, I would say 6 or 7 that are untouchable right now. But other than that, everybody, there's a price for everybody. And the Falcons would be dumb not to entertain if somebody called and said, hey, we're willing to give you, a second and a third for Kyle Pitts. Hell yeah, you jump at that. You're probably never going to get a first round pick for him. But if somebody does call and say, hey, we'll give you our first round pick in 2026 for Kyle Pitts. All right, do you want him on American, United, or Delta? Right? Like, how do you want us to deliver him to you?
Oh, man. I mean, look, I can see a scenario, and I don't want to jump ahead to the topic. I can see a scenario, and people are going to think I'm crazy, where someone offers us a first for Kirk, but I can't see it for Pitts. And maybe that I'm being a little optimistic as a Falcons fan, but it has been done before, and we will get in those precedents. But let's get into the next topic. So, we talked about this a little bit before we went live. Breaking news. Our division rivals, their starting quarterback, Derek Carr, has officially retired. For those of you that were paying attention, the Saints paid Carr $38 million on March 9th of this year. What they did by giving him that money up front is they wanted to spread out that hit of $38 million over 5 years. Now, what happened is when he retired, he left $28.75 million of that $38.75 million that was paid on the table. He gets to keep $10 million of it. But what happens is when you retire and you prorate contracts out, all that money accelerates. So all the money that has been pushed out in prior years gets recognized between this year and next year. Bottom line, long story short, the Saints are going to have a dead cap hit in total of $50 million that needs to be recognized this year and next year, just depending on when the retirement's processed. If it's processed in June 1 or before June 1, that's what gets determined on how much, when the bulk of that $50 million is going to be recognized. But it sounds like they're going to process it after 6/1, so it's going to split something like $13 million this year, which will be a savings of $7 million, and then $35 million next year, which will save them $25 million against the cap because he was slated to count $60 million. Jeff, in total, this guy won 14 of the 27 games he started, averaged a little over 225 yards per game, a touchdown and a half, and threw half a pick in those 27 games he started. Bottom line, was this a bust for the Saints?
I hope every quarterback decision they make is a bust, right? Like that. I mean, fuck the Saints. I think they really thought he was going to be the heir apparent to Drew Brees for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years at the end of his career. And that obviously just was not the case. And it could happen to a better franchise, to be quite honest with you. I can't stand the Saints. I'm glad that he retired because it leaves them in an even worse position than they are now. I mean, you look at that quarterback room and you just start laughing. I mean, it's hilarious to look at what that quarterback room looks like after what it looked like for almost 20 years. Those Drew Brees years were some really good years for them, and obviously they got a Super Bowl out of it, and they got some other things out of it, and it's been the Saints Minus will be famous on Comedy Central moving forward because it's just hilarious to see what has happened to that franchise over the course of the last 5 years. I for one am here for it. Looking over on our YouTube channel, ATLF checks in and says, "Is there a chance we trade Cousins to the Saints?" Nope. No. The Saints would have to offer something absolutely absurd for the Falcons to say, "Sure, we'll help you out." Because no matter what you think of Kirk Cousins, we're not in the business of helping out division rivals. I would hope that Terry Fontenot, I don't care where he started his career, I would hope that he wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire, right? And so I don't see a scenario where we send them Kirk Cousins unless, as Andrew pointed out, maybe there's a scenario where they offer a first. And at that point, you would have to give it some serious consideration. But just out and out, no, they would not. I mean, it would have to be a pretty special package. So, look, I'm happy he's gone. It really wasn't any sweat off our back. I mean, let's be honest. Taysom Hill is the one quarterback in that room we always have to worry about because, no matter how bad he plays, he always seems to find a fucking way to come around and beat the Falcons, right? And so, Derek Carr is gone. Great. I'll be honest with you. I woke up about 30 minutes ago, so I hadn't even seen the news, Andrew, until you said, "Hey, man, did you see Carr retired?" I was like, "No, wait." And so, look, I will say I do feel like the Carr brothers have had a really bad go at this NFL thing, right? I thought Derek Carr, for his time in Houston, if he had been anywhere else, I think Derek Carr probably goes down as one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game because that dude had every tool in the toolbox to be great. And unfortunately for him, he got sacked like 3,000 times a year and it ended his career early because of injuries, right? And so, you hate to see it happen to guys because all in all, David does seem to be a really good guy. He just happened to play in his career with a really shitty franchise. So, you hate to see it happen to really good guys. You always, as a matter of fact, this conversation I've had with my son recently, games, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, the game demands your time, effort, attention. It demands a lot from you. But then the game will also trash you and throw you away before you're ever ready. And you hate to see it happen to guys. But this is just an example. The game was done with David Carr, and it sucks for him. It's great for I think for everybody else involved. But again, the Falcons' issue has never been David Carr. It's always been Taysom Hill for the last 5+ years. Even when he was there with Drew Brees, right? Like he still seemed to be the damn problem versus the Falcons. So if we can find a way to get rid of Taysom Hill too, universe, that would be great. But yeah, David Carr, it is what it is.
I don't know what it is with Taysom Hill. The second he plays us, he just becomes this electric QB, and he's a Falcon killer. That's bottom line. So, yeah, I'm happy that he's 34 and probably his best years are behind him, but I would not be surprised if he just gets up against the game against us and throws up 3 touchdowns.
Oh, he looks like a damn Hall of Famer every time he takes the field versus the Falcons. I mean, it's absolute. He's going to be the guy. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame because of how he treated the Falcons, and he's going to walk up wearing a Falcons shirt just to gut punch one more damn time.
So just for people, that aren't as familiar with Derek Carr's career, he obviously started out with the Raiders, and, he was middle of the pack, but then in 2016, he had a pretty nice run. He led the Raiders to a 12-4 record, I believe. And he was actually third in MVP voting. What happened that year, though, is I think the last game of the season, or second to last, he got injured and couldn't play in the wild card game. So then fast forward 4 years later, I believe we're in 2020 now, and Vic Bisaccia is the head coach, I believe, and they had that crazy game against the Chargers where if they both tied, they would both make it to the playoffs. But then the Chargers got a little aggressive and the Raiders end up kicking the game-winning field goal. They play against the Bengals that game. Long story short, that wild card game where the Raiders went into Cincinnati, that they were pretty freaking close to knocking off the Bengals. And that's the year the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. So, long story short, like Carr obviously didn't have the best go in the NFL, but he definitely had some moments. He could have, that Raiders team that played the Bengals, they weren't half bad, so they could have definitely done some damage. And circling back, would we trade Cousins to the Saints? Just keep in mind that the Saints offensive line, they have two good tackles in Fuaga and Banks. They have a guard, Cesar Ruiz. They have weapons, Shaheed, Olave. Obviously, you have Kamara back there. I don't know that you want to insert Kirk Cousins into that offense. It might not. I would love if JPJ and Walker just tee off on him, but let's not give them a pulse unless we have to. If they throw a first round pick at us, absolutely. Because if Cousins goes down again, that first round pick, everyone's bragging about how our first round pick in 2026 is going to be top 5. Cousins goes down. And even if Cousins is there, there's a shot that pick could be, a top 10, top 5 pick. You have to take that seriously. But other than that, I can't see them trading him for a third just to clear the money off the books. It's not worth it. Eat the money and let him be the best backup in the NFL.
Yeah, not again, not to the division rival, right? Not to the rival, not just the division rival, to the rival. So no, I just don't see it happening again, unless the Saints are, absolutely drunk one night and drunk text the Falcons and say, hey, we'll give you a first, and the Falcons jump at it, and now you have a binding contract, right? So I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I can see other teams doing it, but the thing is, the Saints aren't in that mode where they're like, oh, like we're Super Bowl or bust, right? There are some other teams that if their QB goes down and their coaches are kind of like on their last legs in the NFL, those teams, it makes sense for them to overpay for Cousins, but I can't see that happening with New Orleans. Okay, let's go into our next topic. So Michael Penix had a pretty cool interview on CBS with two-time Super Bowl champion Bryant McFadden. For those of you guys that don't remember, he was the defensive back with the Steelers, got both of his titles with them in the early 2000s. And the part of the interview that I found most fascinating, Jeff, was when Penix was breaking down his fourth down play against the Commanders that basically tied up the game towards the end in the fourth quarter. So what I really appreciated most about him, Jeff, is he was kind of talking about like how he was reading the defense. He talked about how he used his eyes to manipulate the defender, and basically his demeanor the whole time, his composure, even during the interview. Like, the guy just has it. Like, you don't see it a lot with rookie QBs. Like, he showed more composure in that interview and in that one game against Washington than Caleb Williams has ever shown in 17 games, than Bryce Young has shown in 2 years. Like, I have not seen another rookie QB other than Jaden Daniels show me what Penix showed in just 3 games. Biggest question mark to me is always going to be injury with him. But if, by God, this guy stays healthy, we have a really bright future in Atlanta. Jeff, did you watch that interview? Did you have any takeaways from that?
Yeah, one of my takeaways is that Bryant McFadden puts ketchup on everything, including his grits, which is absolutely disgusting. Like, talking about I'm from the South. Okay, well, people from the South don't put ketchup on grits or collard greens, so let's stop that nonsense right now. No, I thought the interview was great overall, right? And I thought it gave a really great inside look into Michael Penix. And I do agree, he's mature beyond his years. I think it goes to, I think it shows one, what kind of quarterback he has the potential to be, and that he understands things at a different level. He's able to process things at a different level than a lot of rookie quarterbacks, a lot of young quarterbacks. I think it gives us a glimpse into how special this kid actually can be, right? And so I think if you were watching that, and if you haven't, go back and watch it because it's fantastic. I mean, even the part where he's talking golf with Matt Ryan, the whole interview was just phenomenal. And so I loved every second of it. I thought it was great. I love the fact that a lot of it took place at a Waffle House, which is very, which is very Atlanta, right? Like that's, so just the whole thing. I thought he represented himself well. It just for me, I thought it was great. I think I think it was that interview, or was it a different one where he talked about how he was just trolling everybody now with wearing the do-rag. Just the whole thing was just, it gave us a glimpse into a really quiet kid, right? Because he's a quiet kid. He's not a all about me type of guy. He's not very loud. He's not very demonstrative. He's not, he's not a look at me type of dude. And so I appreciated that interview. I appreciated the non-formality of it. I just don't know how your takeaway is anything but excited after watching Michael Penix do that interview.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the world gave us shit for that pick. But God forbid, Jeff, God forbid we did not make that pick last year. We might have been the ones to end Shedur's slide. Just saying. And it might have been as early as pick 15.
100%. Which is, and I am thankful that is not the case. And it's funny, you kind of go back and you look, people were upset with the pick, not because of where he was taken, or not because of who it was, but because of where he was taken, right? Because people forget that going into the draft last year, he was seen as a second, third round pick. And that, but again, it's just another example of, these high media guys that think they know everything. Teams don't always have a quarterback, or a player where, guys like Mel Kiper Jr., think they should. And he's a great example of that. And he's going to end up, you look at all the great quarterbacks that were taken last year, he could potentially end up being the best of all of them. And, he may not have had the immediate success as a rookie that a guy like Jaden Daniels has. But this is a slow paced race. This is a marathon. This is not hey, who can jump out the fastest? Who can outlast and who can perform better over a longer period of time. And so for me, I am thankful that there's Michael Penix. I'm thankful that we weren't looking for a quarterback this year because, taking him last year at 8, I think really set the foundation for the future of this franchise and allowing them to make the moves they made this year as well. And so I think all in all, Terry Fontenot is not going to get the credit he deserves for the last 2 years. But that was his decision last year. It was not and that may have been the only decision in the draft that was his. But he knocked it out of the park with Penix at 8, and then this year he followed that up with a hell of an encore. So I think all in all, we are all blessed to have that dude here, and I think he's just different, and that's probably the best compliment you can give a quarterback, because he's just different.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Jeff, because on the board at the time were Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy, right? J.J. McCarthy was a consensus first-rounder. Everyone had him there. But Nix and Penix were kind of like, hey, maybe these guys are going to be the first ones off the board in day 2. But we take Penix at 8. Broncos take Nix, I believe, at 12 or 13. You don't hear the media bashing the Broncos for taking Nix, right? I know part of it's driven by Kirk Cousins. The other part is Sean Payton, working for Fox Sports, has a lot of connections in the media too, so they wouldn't dare bash Sean. But again, the Falcons are sort of the punching bag in the NFL. This Ulbrich thing comes out and everybody has a field day with this prank call situation. So anytime there's a glimmer, anytime we do something right, it's never publicized. Anytime we do something wrong, we are front and center, the jokes of the freaking NFL. Watch what happens, Jeff. If we freaking get a first round pick or even a second round pick for Cousins and make the other team pay his salary, no one's going to say shit. It's going to be a second page line item in the in the NFL.
100%. And it's weird because what have the Falcons ever done to anybody? Right? Like, this is a franchise that has underachieved for 50 fucking years. And yet somehow, major market media or national media absolutely hates this franchise. And it is crazy. And this is not a poor me moment, right? Like, this is not a woe is me type of thing. But if you actually take a step back and you look at the way that the national media and the national pundits talk about Atlanta, it is absolutely, but it even transcends the Falcons. You look at the way they talk about the Braves, right? I mean, obviously this year didn't start out all that great, being 0-7 and having to battle back. But even after winning the World Series, they were still picked to finish third in their division, They brought everybody back, and you had third behind the Phillies and the Mets. And so, it's a really weird, and they always call Atlanta, Atlanta's a bad sports town. I disagree. Atlanta has some diehard fans. Falcons, Hawks, Braves, Atlanta United. The diehards in this town are fucking phenomenal. And I don't think it's a bad sports town. I think it has really bad coverage. And I think all in all, we have really bad media in this town, if we're being honest. And that bad media perception blends itself into the fan base, unfortunately. And, everybody always looks at how great New York is. Well, New York is known to be ruthless. Boston is known to be ruthless, right? Like, the media members up there just don't give a shit. And you look at national media, they're scared of those idiots up there. Nobody's scared of anybody here in Atlanta, right? Because they got, the morons like Mike Bell. They have guys here who think they know everything and probably aren't very good at what they do. Might be highly entertaining, but they're not informative. They're not, they're known more for bashing fans than they are for going after the guys on, that are in charge of franchises. And so I think that's where a lot of the bad sports town comes from, is because the Atlanta media here is absolutely fucking terrible. There are some exceptions, like the Myles Garrett, not Myles Garrett in Cleveland, but we do have a guy, Myles Garrett, here who seems to get all the death threats anytime that Myles Garrett does something stupid. He's fantastic at what he does. Andy and Randy on 92.9 The Game are phenomenal at what they do. So there's some really good media members here. But by and large, media here is absolutely atrocious. And I think the fan base pays the price for that. And, it sucks because, to your point, it's the Falcons stay in a catch-22. Like, they're always going to be the jokes, regardless of how well something works out. And people won't admit it with the way they trashed the Falcons last year, but it's fucking worked out. Going against the grain and taking Michael Penix last year, much to the chagrin of NBC, ESPN, Fox Sports, who absolutely had fucking field days last year. It's worked out. Sorry, assholes, it's worked out.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because one of the arguments last year when we took Penix is, Atlanta didn't ask Cousins for permission. The guy didn't play a fucking game with us, and we handed him $100 million guaranteed. What fucking permission do we need to ask this guy? Is he Tom Brady? Is he Peyton Manning? The guy has had one career playoff win to his name, but we need his permission to draft a QB. And then the other situation is, the Vikings were up front. They're a really great front. NFL teams are in the business of making their team really good, giving them a competitive advantage. Brett Favre didn't get a heads up. Aaron Rodgers didn't get a heads up. Why should Kirk Cousins have gotten a heads up for a team he never played for?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady didn't get a heads up, and the Patriots drafted like 7 quarterbacks during his 20 years, right? Like, it just you don't need to ask permission from a guy you're paying, right? Like, he's not signing Terry Fontenot's paycheck. He's not signing Arthur Blank's paycheck. They're signing his. You don't need his fucking permission to make the team better, and to have a backup plan. And so, it's worked out. And the media will never recognize the fact that it did work out. The last laugh will be when Michael Penix holds up that MVP trophy after leading this team to the Super Bowl.
Oh, man, that would be freaking amazing. I mean, look, the thing about Falcons fans is, and, we talk about the media members, right? But, like, we also need to, like, really, like, kind of, like, lock arms right now, because the whole freaking media, the whole NFL is laughing at us. And this is the best. I think 2025, the definition of this year, if we have to title it, is the fuck you year. And by that, I mean, we're going to prove the NFL wrong. Our 2 rookies are going to go crazy. Penix is going to go crazy. And I want everyone's freaking foot in their mouth. All those media members, this is our freaking time. So we need everybody to sort of be, let's not bash each other on X, go after the stupid ass Saints fans, Panthers fans that think Bryce Young could be in the same sentence as Michael Penix. Are you fucking kidding me? He just played a freaking JV defense. That's why the Panthers beat us that last week of the season. When all the chips are on the table, week 2, whatever it is next season, when the game actually matters, watch what happens. And thank you, by the way. Thank you, Panthers, for winning that game. Because had we been pick 18, we don't land Jalen Walker. So I'm very happy we lost that game.
Oh, 100%. And if you don't lose that game, you probably don't make some tough choices as far as replacing your coordinators. So there's some things that happen as a result of that loss, right? And so I am absolutely thankful for that. And but yeah, Bryce Young, like, dude's not even tall enough to ride the ride. Like, you missed me with how he's the next great quarterback. And did he improve last year? Of course he did. He looked far better in week 18 than he did week 1 and 2. But yeah, like he's got to go hang out at the kiddie pool, and so I ain't got time for that. I love the fact it sucks that Tampa's got Baker because Baker's figured it out, right? And so Baker will keep Tampa relevant, and those will be some really good battles between he and Nine for the next few years, which will be fun to watch, and hopefully like last year we'll win the majority of them.
I hope so. That would be great. Okay, let's move into the next segment, Jeff. Let's talk about all the latest and greatest news with the Falcons, rumors, and the first thing before we get to actual players, the schedule is going to be released, I believe, this coming Wednesday. And
Yep.
one of the things circulating on X right now is that the Falcons are rumored to be the team that will play the Colts in Germany on November 9th. We know that the Falcons have marketing rights in Germany, so that connection makes sense. Have you heard anything different, or is this just the rumor for right now? Are people just trying to connect the dots?
So I haven't heard anything. People keep asking me that, and I just simply ignore it because I don't have any information on the schedule. So last year I didn't get any information about the schedule until the day before the release. And so I, typically, and that was the first time, honestly, last year was the first time that my guide ever sent me anything on the information. I do know the team knows their dates. The team, obviously, because they have to make travel arrangements, and the NFL obviously helps with all of that. But partnerships helps. But yeah, the team knows what the schedule is. I haven't asked. I haven't gotten any information. Last year it was the day before that I was able to give you guys information. So I don't have any info. I have seen that the whole November in Germany, which I'll be honest, I don't know that you want to be in Germany in November. It's really cold. There's a lot of snow on the ground, and it could be for a travel nightmare. So while I hope that rumor is false, hopefully they play in Germany earlier in the year. You definitely don't want to be in Germany in November.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be cold there, but their stadium. I'm kind of like a nut for like those soccer stadiums in Europe. Those stadiums are all really freaking cool, so that part of it would be nice. But again, hopefully it's earlier in the year. And also what do you call it, I'm happy that we don't have to give up a home game for it. It would be someone else's home game, so yeah, I don't mind that at all. I will
say that it is interesting to me though, that you are going to play games in Germany. And I say that because, NFL Europe was a thing. They had teams in Berlin as well as Frankfurt. Frankfurt was actually really good, won a couple titles in NFL Europe, but they would not, those two franchises, Berlin, I think it was the Berlin Reign and the Frankfurt Galaxy, they weren't very popular, right? American football was not popular in Germany. So it's really weird for me that the NFL is like, hey, we're going to come back to Germany. And look, I get it. NFL Europe was not what the NFL is. I completely understand that. But there were some dudes that played for both franchises that ended up having pretty good NFL careers. And so I think it's weird that the NFL keeps wanting to force American football down the throats of Europeans. Because to your point, Europeans love soccer. They don't like, some of the, and we do have some fans in Germany. We have some fans that subscribe to this podcast that interact with both of us, almost daily on there. So shout out to all of them, because I'm not talking about you. But by and large, Frankfurt and Berlin are not huge oases for American football fans. And so, it's just really odd for me. And again, hopefully, if the Falcons are the team that goes to Germany, and I think we know that they are, I just don't know that we know when. But again, you better, I promise you better hope it's not November.
Jeff, what about Hard Knocks? So I don't think the team has been announced yet for this season. Do you think that the Falcons have a shot at being the team featured on Hard Knocks?
100%. Because you look at the criteria, the Falcons, like no team within the last certain amount of years, no team, blah, 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 blah. The Falcons are absolutely going to be one of the finalists. And I think when you look at some of the, when you look at the young talent, there isn't a franchise in the NFL with more young talent than the Falcons have. And so they're really, really intriguing. For me, I have zero desire to see the Falcons on Hard Knocks. Not because I don't want to see the inner workings, but because, how many teams typically go on to have really great seasons after being on Hard Knocks? I don't know that it's a whole lot of them. The last time we were on Hard Knocks, Mike Smith said some really dumb shit, made us look fucking retarded. Okay. I have zero desire in seeing Raheem Morrison. Look, Raheem seems to be a little bit more well-spoken than Mike Smith was. Let's be honest. Last time we were on Hard Knocks, Mike Smith said, well, socks aren't important to me. What? And it was funny because when the week that came out, I actually I did a show that same week with Jamal Anderson, our former running back, not the defensive end, but our former Dirty Bird himself. And so we were actually we did a show together that night, actually, after Hard Knocks, and that came out. And Jamal was pissed that type of nonsense came out of his mouth. He was like, people don't understand what an embarrassment that is. And so we actually spent some time talking about it that night on air. And then he got a DUI a week later and got fired. But nonetheless, even NFL players former Falcons were just like, holy shit, Mike Smith actually had the audacity to come out and say sacks don't matter, because they fucking do. And so I just have a really bad taste in my mouth from the last time we were on Hard Knocks. I have no desire to see the Falcons on Hard Knocks. I know they do. I know we all enjoy having behind the scenes opportunities to see our favorite teams and our players and that kind of thing. Hey, just as a request, NFL, can we get some Hard Knocks with fucking officials? Like, I want to see the behind the scenes on your referees that make some really bad calls that ultimately, be a deciding factor, not the deciding factor, but a deciding factor in games that are won and lost by teams. That's what I want to see. Stop putting players out there for this shit. I want to see officials get reprimanded. I want to see what goes on, because you look at the popularity of the NFL, it's because of gambling. And how many millions are won or lost every week by flags that show up out of the fucking blue. And you go back and you're like, well, wait a minute. And then you got to listen to some blowhard on one of the networks justify some bullshit ass flag. I want the Hard Knocks that shows that. I don't want the Hard Knocks that shows teams. I want to see the Hard Knocks to see what kind of reprimanding that these officials get for making these really bad calls, and what that process looks like. That's what I want to see. So no, I have no desire to see the Falcons. I want to see officials be held accountable behind the scenes is what I want to see.
No way that the NFL does that, though, because that'll make them look like shit.
No, but again, when you look at the popularity of the league, it's because of gambling. And millions of dollars are won and lost every single week because of calls that are made by guys wearing stripes that aren't playing in the game. And so I want, if the NFL really wants to be open and transparent, fucking show that part of that, right? Go make these officials be on some sort of reality show. Hell, make it a Hunger Games where you make a really bad fucking call, you get executed for doing so. You know what I mean? Like, let's make this be absolutely as ridiculous as possible, because let's be honest, some of these officials are absolutely ridiculous. Some of them have no idea what they're doing, and the calls that these guys make and these women make with games on the line make you scratch it. If I had hair, I would pull it out some of these weeks. And it's just absolutely atrocious that they keep getting away with this. And but the NFL keeps doing this whole, well, we're going to show you your favorite team every week, and now you have an in-season Hard Knocks. Why? So you forget about all the bullshit that happened on Sunday during a game. And so for me, I want to see something intriguing. Stop running teams out there. I want to see the inner workings of the NFL. I want to see some of this shit that we actually want to know what goes on as far as officials go, because they don't have to answer to the media. They don't have to go through the scrutiny that players do. Yet they get to make these atrocious phone calls. They get to make these atrocious calls during games that affect outcomes and aren't held accountable for that. And so I think there should be some sort of public accountability for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, if we are on Hard Knocks, right, it's not only if we say stupid shit. First of all, everything's going to be amplified. Second of all, we know how much the media loves to make us look stupid. So whatever opportunity they get, they are going to definitely try to, exemplify it, make it bigger than what it is. And I don't want this for this young team, but unfortunately, it might not be our choice. So
unfortunately,
we'll see what happens. Last year, Jeff, circling back to schedules, we had 4 primetime games, and one we got flexed into, Sunday Night Washington. This year, there are a couple of teams that I think are worthy of a primetime slot. So I'm going to just list off 4 teams. You just let me know if you think it's possible. And I know you don't have any information on it yet, but the 4 most likely games I think we'll get in primetime are Commanders. That's a rematch of last year. Obviously, you have our former coach Dan Quinn on the other side. We have a rivalry between Daniels and Penix. I think the Rams are possible because that's Raw's former team. I like the Patriots too. I think that obviously we have the Super Bowl rematch storyline, historical. Then you have May versus Penix, 2 rookie QBs from the same class. And the last one that I think might happen is Minnesota. Obviously, we had the Kirk Cousins drama, but that might not even matter at that point. But again, you pit a QB, JJ McCarthy, against Penix. I think that also could be in prime time. Which game do you think might end up being prime time next year?
So for me, I always want Saints Falcons prime time. I don't know that it's going to happen now, right? Because they probably won't be very good. I think the Rams is intriguing.
We also got Buffalo too coming to Atlanta, so it would be fun to see Josh Allen in a dome.
That would be a fun one on prime time. I think that with Josh Allen, there's just because there's so much going on in Buffalo or with Buffalo, there obviously will be, there'll be a one of the 3, 2 or 3 favorites to win the AFC. And so I just wouldn't be shocked if the Falcons didn't have any primetime games initially coming into the season and get flexed into 1 or 2 of them at the end of the year because of how good they are. But for me, yeah, I would like to see, at least one division game, maybe the Bucks, because they will be good. They will be favored. If a primetime game between Baker and Penix, I think would be, Baker, Penix, Evans, London, the 2 defenses, like that could be a really fun game to watch in prime time. So for me, that would be a great one. Minnesota doesn't do anything for me. LA to me doesn't do a whole lot for me. But again, coming off a year where you shit the bed at the end of the year, you didn't have a great final 8 games. I don't know what the TV draws were for the Falcons last year. Are they prime time? I don't know. So when you look at these, who's the prime time draws? Josh Allen is a prime time draw, right? Like everybody wants to see Josh Allen play, regardless if you're a Buffalo fan or not. You want to see Josh Allen play because he's a great. So I think that could be the one that is a potential prime time for sure. Again, the other one for me would be a game versus the Bucks. I don't care if it's home or away. Primetime games in Atlanta hit a little bit different. We love the party in this city, and so primetime games gives our fan base time to actually show up. Though my suggestion is if it's a primetime game here in Atlanta, tell them it shows that it starts at 4:00 so they actually show up on time. Because we all know the late crowds in Atlanta love to show up fucking late for games, and it irritates the absolute piss out of me. But yeah, there's some opportunities. I would tell Falcons fans, just don't be upset if you initially don't have any primetime games and you get flexed into a couple of them once you've established how good you're going to be.
Yeah, look, last year we started off with 4 and we got flexed into 1, and the only reason we got flexed into that, I think, is because people wanted to see Jaden Daniels versus Penix, and maybe there wasn't really anything else they could flex either because Penix didn't really establish himself before that happened. I could see us getting 3. If I had to predict right now, I think we get 3 off the bat with the upside, and especially there are different rules now. It's easier to flex into primetime games as opposed to years past. and I could see us getting into another 2, hopefully. But primetime games are always fun, Jeff. I was actually at the Commanders game last year when we went into overtime in DC. It was, man, it was crazy. I'm just happy that their fans aren't as rowdy as some other fan bases, because I was definitely losing my mind, going crazy, getting food thrown at me and everything. My wife wasn't really happy with me. But anyways, let's move on to actual player news. So here's one that that happened earlier this week, Jeff. The Panthers, who took 2 defensive ends in day 2 in the 2025 draft, ended up cutting Jadeveon Clowney, who in the last game of the season basically made Caleb McGarry his bitch, for a lack of better terms. He annihilated McGarry, and he really was a problem for Penix. So I think, maybe he's not going to go up against McGarry every week. I think he definitely has some juice left in the tank. I was actually surprised that Carolina cut him, because they're not really paying anybody, right? Like, why not have him kind of train the younger guys? I know we talked about Judon potentially coming back, even though we drafted JPJ and Walker. Do you think there is any chance that the Falcons are interested in Clowney?
God, that is such a really good question. I think it depends on what Clowney's mindset is, right? Does he hear, what is this, year 14 or whatever this is for him? Does he think he's still a starter? Because if he does, then no, there's no room for him here, because like you've got the 2 young guys that you're gonna get on the field. And so if you're gonna bring in another veteran, in addition to the one that you already brought in here, is Clowney going to be willing to accept a reduced type of role? And so, I think any franchise worth a shit is going to reach out and look, I think Jadeveon Clowney is overrated. I think he had one of the most overrated plays in college football history. When Taylor Lewan and his guard miscommunicated and they left him wide open for that hit, and like nobody has milked more of a career off of one single play than he has. His NFL career has not panned out to be what it was supposed to be when you take a guy number 1 overall. So I'm not a big fan of his. I think he's more of a locker room issue and throughout his career than he's been worth. So, from a personal standpoint, I hope they don't. But I know Falcons fans really like Jadeveon Clowney because they're reminded of that game last year, right? Like they really think that, that's who they're getting, and it's just not. You go back and you watch him last year, that was not who he was. He just happened to find a tackle that he could absolutely fucking abuse, and it happened to be Caleb McGarry. And so I just don't know that he would be worth whatever money you're going to give. I don't know that he fits from a culture standpoint. I don't think he fits from a leadership, because when you bring in a vet, right, you're bringing them in because you want some leadership from them at the end of their career, right? Like this is not year 5 or 6 for him. This is the end of his career. And so is he willing to provide that locker room leadership that it needs, that you would want from him? And I just don't know that he is. I don't know that he's ever been that type of player, right? So there's a lot of questions that I would need answers to before agreeing to even entertain that if I'm the Falcons. And one is he willing to accept a reduced role and be more of a leader than, on the sidelines, on the field, in the locker room, than on the field, with the understanding that, hey, we've got 2 young first-round draft picks at your spot. They're going to get the first, second, third look. Are you okay with that? And if he says, no, I need to be a starter, then you move on, because you don't need that type of friction in your locker room. So I know people will want him because he's a name, right? And that's what we do here in Atlanta. Anytime a big name that we recognize becomes available, we're like, hey, let's go get that guy, right? And that's just not. I just think this is one of those names that you just leave alone. I think you've got some really good guys here in this locker room, and if you do want some veteran leadership, go out and sign a guy who was here last year. For me, at this point, I would much rather have a guy like Judon than a guy like Clowney, for all the reasons that I just listed. He's not a locker room cancer. He's a leader. He understands what that is going to look like, at 32, 33 years old. So for me, I would rather have Judon than Clowney, but I know Clowney's a bigger name, and people will remember him for what he did to Caleb McGarry, not necessarily what type of year he actually had.
Yeah, I mean, someone like Judon has been in big games. He's played with Baltimore and New England, so like he knows what that culture was all about. So you want people like him. You want people like Ramsey, for example. I know he's a big name too, but he's won a Super Bowl. He's close with Raw, and like he could really change that defensive mindset we have. He brings a certain swag. Those are the types of people you want. I'm with you. Clowney's a big name, and I think he could actually find success in a limited role with us. It's just, that room's so crowded right now, which is crazy. And I love even saying that. I'm not even going to lie, Jeff. Like, I was looking at our defensive depth chart the other day, and I was just like, oh my God, we are so, like, even you move to our, like, backups, the second stringers, like, you got some names back there too. Like, this is real. I think we might field one of the best defenses we've seen in, like, in a while, I would say.
Yeah, but I think it also depends on, I think if they're looking to add anybody, who are you going to add for that nose tackle, right? Like that's the one piece where I think that they still need somebody. You look at the depth chart on this defense, and it just sucks not having Brady here because like this is what he wanted during his time here. And it sucks that we finally go out and get Grady the help he needed, and he's not here anymore, right? So but I do think that nose tackle, if you are going to run a 3-4, and we obviously don't know yet, they haven't announced kind of what they're looking at. But you probably need help at that zero technique than you do anything else right now. So for me, if I'm the Falcons, I look to see, who at that position potentially becomes available here in about 3 weeks for those June 1 cuts.
Yeah, really good point. Question from X, Jeff. Isaiah Bond, wide receiver from Texas, didn't get drafted. He was regarded as a day 2 pick before some off-field issues came about. Would Atlanta ever consider signing Isaiah Bond?
I mean, do you really need another playmaker on offense right now?
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to. Character issues have always been a really big issue here. He brings a lot to the table. There's no doubt about that one. He's got a lot of talent. I just don't know when you look at where this team is at, they don't need any other help on offense right now. And so, for me, I don't know that they would. I think, again, the glaring hole that this team needs is that zero technique, if you're going to run a 3-4. So, I think anything else other than that, you are just kind of, dipping a turd in gold at that point. If you're not going to address any remaining needs, wide receiver is not a need on this team right now. Can you improve it? Sure. But how much are you going to improve it with a rookie who may not be focused on football? And that for me is the big thing is he may not even be focused on football right now.
Exactly. And by the way, our wide receiver room, I mean, obviously we have London as our big dog. You got Mooney there. Ray showed signs. Even Kadero Hodge, you remember he had the game-winning touchdown against Tampa. Like, those are 4 pretty solid receivers. And then, on top of all of that, we have an undrafted free agent, Nick Nash, who I think could make the team and possibly be on the 53-man roster during the season. Like, watch out for him, too. So, like, I don't know that we want to throw Bond. Not saying that Bond isn't talented, but there's a lot of baggage that comes with him. And with our team being so young, I think you need to be extra careful of the players you put in that locker room. You want leaders. You want Judons. You want Ramsey. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's really important for our, younger people to look up to these established veterans that's won a couple titles. So someone like a David Andrews, for example, who was the center for the Patriots, won 2 Super Bowls with them. Like, he may be more valuable to us. And by the way, Georgia kid, like, he may be more valuable to us than another center needy team, right?
100%. 100%.
So, we'll see what happens. I think we're going to get a lot more movement at post 6-1 when a lot more cuts and activity is going to be made. So I think we're going to kind of lay low for a little bit. We'll have some meat on the bone after the schedule is released. We can talk about that. That'll probably be the main topic of our show next week. But it's probably going to be a little bit of a dead period between 5:15 and 5:31. So
100%.
We'll see.
100%.
Last thing I want to close with, Jeff. So speaking about Kirk Cousins, we talked about how a team maybe like the 49ers, if Brock Purdy goes down, or another team that's just, have their eyes on the Super Bowl. Let's say Pittsburgh, right? If it doesn't work out with Aaron Rodgers or someone just becomes desperate, could a first round pick be on the table? And what I wanted to share with people is a comp for a situation like this. Let's rewind the tape back to 2016. The Vikings, ironically, had Teddy Bridgewater have this catastrophic injury in training camp where everyone was kind of like, people were like looking at that injury, and I remember there were rumors that like the receivers were like throwing up and stuff. It was just disgusting, and it was really unfortunate too because he was starting to really catch on, and his career was really never the same after that again. They ended up trading their first the following year and a 4th round pick for Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford was taken, I believe, 1 overall by the Rams 6 years prior to that. He never had a winning season. He was averaging like 3,000 yards per game, 16 touchdowns. Nothing really to his name. Like, I don't think he's ever had a season where he's ever been 500. So, bottom line, pretty mediocre guy, but the Vikings were desperate at that point, so they gave up draft capital. Again, Bradford might have had that allure that he was a little younger and a former first overall QB, but I wouldn't put it past someone like a Kyle Shanahan who's worked with Cousins, who wanted Cousins, by the way, before trading for Garoppolo. He tried to sign Cousins. So these teams need to win. Like, when you have teams that need to win now, like Pittsburgh, right? Tomlin's on his last threads. Like, he can't go into the season with Mason Rudolph. If Rodgers just retires, I think they become the number one candidate for Cousins. And then, we're talking about how much money they're putting on their books and how high that draft pick's going to be. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, when desperation meets need, right? Like there's always some things that can take place. And so, but that's kind of going back to why I think the Falcons, and I've said this for months now, that's why the Falcons aren't in a rush. Like the money's already on the books. And so for them, they're going to wait until the last possible minute to get rid of Cousins if it happens, because of the injury factor in this league, right? And that's been the case as long as the NFL has been an entity. And so I think the Falcons were smart, much to the dismay of national media. Like, oh my God, they still have Kirk Cousins on their roster. Kurt wants to be a starter. Well, good for fucking Kurt. He shouldn't have sucked last year then, right? Like, otherwise Kurt would still be a starter. So, if you're the Falcons, you wait and you wait and you wait. And patience is the name of the game. And if you can be patient, typically you're going to be rewarded in this league. And so they're not in a rush. They won't be in a rush because of examples that you just gave. Hell, we already, one quarterback is already done, right? Like that's, if, God forbid something happened to like Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, right? God forbid something happened to Josh Allen in Buffalo, right? Like Joe Burrow has a history of some injury issues in the NFL, right? Like some of these big name guys go down. These franchises get a little bit desperate of wanting a veteran quarterback to come in and be able to make sure that they stay within their Super Bowl window. So, be patient, stay patient, and I think it all ends up working out one of the ways it's supposed to. And I think that the longer the Falcons wait, the better that pick becomes.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that I think would be the most fascinating, and I don't wish injury on anyone, it's just a funny situation to me, is if Stafford goes down and we get our first round pick back. That would be hilarious. Yeah. But we wouldn't get credit for it. It would just be a bottom page thing. Oh, by the way, Falcons traded Kirk Cousins. Finally, they should have done it earlier. That's the way it would probably be spun in the media. So
No doubt.
We'll see what happens. It'll be exciting, and we're getting closer to that. But that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you all, whoever was listening live. We really appreciate that. We're on YouTube and Spotify, so check us out there. I'll throw up the edited videos, some shorts, and everything later today, so that'll be all up hopefully by tonight. We'll be back next week, maybe Friday or Saturday. We'll announce then. But again, really appreciate all you guys, and we'll keep this rolling.